Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Global. Tony. Emergency responders in Colorado pulled a frightened horse out of a septic tank.
Tony Kornheiser, a live horse? How many flushes did that take? How did it get in a septic tank? What?
There are all these incredulous headlines day after day, year after year. I don't believe 75% of these things. A Florida man, I don't believe any of this.
Do you believe it? Do you believe this, that there was a horse in a septic tank?
No,
you don't?
Colorado
really?
Responders, no.
Really? So you say nay on that one, huh? Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, Dallas is in distress. The Warriors win again, and Jeff Saturday joins us for a closer look at the Chiefs' offensive line. But we begin today with Luka Doncic's Laker debut last night, which was equal parts pomp and circumstance. LeBron not only put on a Luka uniform shirt in warm-ups, but just this once, he allowed Luka to be introduced last. And LeBron's parting advice to Luka in the pregame huddle was, and I'm quoting here, "Be your effing self. Don't fit in. Fit the F out." Quote. To make the moment more Hollywood, of course the Lakers won. Wilbon, was one night enough to convince you of anything?
Only that it'll be the fun that we think it's going to be, Tony, to watch. You have called for the network to stop broadcasting all other games and only put on LeBron
only
and
Laker
Luka.
games.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so it's fun to watch. It's appointment television. I'm going to watch I can see them. I don't need any network to cancel stuff. I can see all the games as is. Many of us can, and I will watch. Tony, it doesn't convince me of anything except what I was already convinced of. The two of those guys, they know how to play with anybody. LeBron's played with a variety of people, from Dwayne Wade in the Hall of Fame to Kyrie Irving, who are very, very different people, to Anthony Davis, he knows how to play with anybody. He can make whatever adjustments there are. So I'm convinced of that. Am I convinced the Lakers are going to somehow get to the conference semis? Maybe, but I got to see more defensively, and I'm not going to be convinced of that with one game against Utah, which is probably the worst team in the Western Conference. So, no, I'm going to have to see more. I don't know where they're going to get that defense from. They're going to scramble. I mean, J.J. Redick has done a terrific job with two different teams, it seems, and he's going to have to continue that as coach, a first-year head coach. It's fun to watch. It's intriguing to watch. I don't know what I'm convinced of yet, other than it's fun.
Yeah. I'm convinced of one thing from one game, that Luka Doncic is a real star. This isn't Bradley Beal getting an enormous contract and being promoted as a star. And LeBron is convinced of that too, because LeBron went out of his way to make sure that Luka felt comfortable, to make sure that Luka was part of this team. That tells me something.
There's obviously and while there was a whole lot of love in LA, here in Phoenix, there's Houston, there's obviously Oklahoma City, there's Denver, which is resurgent and scoring 140 points a game as if Paul Westhead was the coach. There's a long way to go, long way. And while there was a whole lot of love in L.A., as Tony mentioned, there was again dissent in Dallas. Boos and fan ejections marked the night, with some spectators calling for the team to fire Nico Harrison, the GM who traded Luka to L.A., of course. On the court, the Mavericks lost the game, and another big man, Daniel Gafford, he left in the first half after his right knee buckled. And after the game, Jason Kidd, who was great with the media in my history with Jason Kidd, he didn't talk to the media. Tone, what does all this say to you about the state of the Mavericks?
So I alluded to this, obviously, in the last story. I'll try and get more detailed right now. If the Mavericks were a stock, you would be selling every share you had as soon as you could before it dropped to a penny. Today, the Mavericks are a disaster. That is curable. Anthony Davis comes back. That is curable. But today, it's a disaster. They traded their best player. They now have no big men. Davis is out. Lively is out. Gafford is now out.
Yeah.
Did I mention that they traded their best player, Luka Doncic? Because I think that's sort of important. They have fans screaming. They have an open fan revolt. They are throwing fans out of the arena like this is some sort of guerrilla theater. I told you when we first talked about this trade that it was an insane trade, and no matter what they did this year, it would cost the GM his job. I think it could cost the coach his job as well. I think it's possible Jason Kidd looks around and says, you know what? I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah, before we get to that, I know there's not much time left, 30 games. They've played 50-plus games. Every team has played more north of 50. There's time left, and Jason Kidd was a hell of a coach last year. They got to the finals 8 months ago. So I'm not going to go to that level of panic just yet. Tony, there's no question the state of the Mavericks right now, it's dire. I mean, I've got friends and sources I talk to in North Texas, and they are in despair about what's going on. They are somewhere between angry at Nico Harrison to despair about the season tickets they hold or held. I'm not going there. The Jason Kidd thing, I just talked to Jason Kidd a week ago, just before, 10 days ago, before this trade. And the Mavericks knew they were in a tough position with their bigs getting hurt because Lively had just gotten hurt. And they need Anthony Davis back, and a month may not give them enough time. Again, dire. But, Tony, Jason Kidd's been a terrific coach. If Jason Kidd leaves Dallas, I'd hire him in a heartbeat to coach whoever I got, and I might throw out whoever I have. So I'm just saying, before everybody jumps ship.
I didn't say to fire him. I didn't say to fire him. I said he may not want to be there. There's an open fan revolt. This is not fun. Nobody wants to play for them now. This can change. Today's a bad day. Today's a bad day. We will stay with the NBA and go to Golden State, where Jimmy Butler is now 2-0 and has not demanded to be traded, though the night is young. They beat Milwaukee last night, but without Giannis Antetokounmpo. Steph Curry had 38 points. Butler had 20 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 steals, and that is an impressive line. Wilbon, how high have you raised your ceiling for the Warriors?
Tony, I've raised it some just because I have that much respect for Jimmy Butler, who you know has been one of my favorite players, at times my favorite player in the league for years. I have that much respect for him, and particularly in concert with Draymond Green and Steph Curry and Steve Kerr pulling the levers. I do. And then Steve Kerr even talked about getting to 6th, and that would be a good place to get. I mean, you don't want to be in the play-in, 7, 8, 9, 10, even though they may have to go through the play-in because the Western Conference is that strong, particularly at the top. But I look at the Warriors and I see some of the same problems I see with the Lakers. They'd be great in a 6-6 and under league, but it's not that. And so when Dallas gets his people back, Dallas is huge. OKC has a couple of big monsters in there when healthy. Houston, big. Memphis, big. Denver, Jokic. Playing 6-6 and under is going to be difficult. I know they can scramble. I know their basketball IQs are high. I loved watching them. I watched the Warriors last night. I want to watch every game they play. I don't know what's practical. Is it higher than 6? And do you want to play them in a playoff series? No, you don't, especially if you're a young team. Even OKC, Houston, you don't want them necessarily. 6th might be a real decent target for the rest of the regular season.
Let's cut to the chase here. If you're talking about a higher ceiling, you're not talking about 6. You're really asking, do you think they can win the NBA title this year? And my short answer is no. There are many teams that are actually better than them. But, and there's always a but, Jimmy Butler is a great playoff player. He is 1.5 times as good in the playoffs as he is in the regular season. This is not Paul George. This is the real deal. He just went through 2 playoff runs with Miami where he averaged 27 points a game, 39 games. He averages 27 points. This is a guy who averages 18 in the regular season. And where did they go? They went to the NBA Finals in one and the Conference Finals in another. Again, not Paul George. So you like to believe that with Jimmy Butler, almost anything is possible. You're 100% right. They're not big. They don't have any of that stuff. But if you get in the playoffs with a couple of magical players, Steph Curry is now crediting Jimmy Butler's presence for making him better. I think he's got either 72 or 74 points in these last 2 games. That's a lot. He's shooting over 50%. He's got 14 made threes. Okay, and he's correlating Butler's arrival with this renaissance. Got to take it seriously. Let's take a break.
Yeah.
Coming up, is the Chiefs' offensive line getting too much blame for the team's Super Bowl loss?
No. Kellen Moore takes the Saints job. Where's that going to leave the Eagles? The Warriors will be tough, Tony. They got 3 tough guys out there. I don't know if the size, lack of, is going to hurt them.
See, the Lakers have no size. The Lakers, when they had to rescind that trade, that hurts. The Chiefs' offensive line is taking a lot of heat after the Chiefs lost to the Eagles in the Super Bowl. So we have questions for our great friend and former center offensive line guy, ESPN NFL analyst Jeff Saturday. Let's start with this. Some people have blamed this loss on a poor Chiefs offensive line. And I would have to say that if you made me go to one category, that would be my category. Some have credited the talent and the scheme of the Eagles defense, surely, and some say that the Chiefs should have run the ball more. Where are you on all these things, Jeff?
That's a great question. I'm going to go 33 1/3 to all of them. There is reason in every one of those statements. And the Chiefs offensive line did not play well. They were getting compressed at the edges. They're getting pushed in the pocket. They made Mahomes very uncomfortable early. The run pass ratio by the Chiefs was atrocious and didn't give them any help. And listen, from a guy who, when you go face the defensive line, when their ears are pinned back and they know exactly where Mahomes is going to line up, that is a painful way to go play and get exposed. And then the talent of the Eagles offensive line is legit, and they can absolutely get after the quarterback. And when they only have one mission, and that's to go seek and destroy the quarterback, it makes it all that much more difficult. So I'll give each of those equal credit and share for how that game turned out.
Well, Jeff, given that, clearly the Chiefs are going to have to do something to augment that offensive line. They've done it before.
Yeah.
This time around, they have limited cap space, limited money to go out and chase free agents. With that in mind, what do you do next?
Well, I mean, they've drafted in the second, third round some left tackle help, and so obviously they have to continue to develop. It didn't work out this season, but that doesn't mean Andy Heck and that offense, even Andy Reid, been around this game a long time and loves offensive line. Hopefully they can potentially work with guys there on the team. But we've seen Veach go out and get guys and fix it through the draft. And so if that's the direction they head, I would trust that as well. That was what they did with Creed Humphreys and Trey Smith. And so, in my opinion, I think you bump Tooney back inside. Now you have 3 of the strongest inside. You sign Trey Smith to an extension, and you can work this thing out. But it was one of those things that happened, Mike, this year that just got spun out of control. And every answer they thought they had. And let's not forget their receivers were banged up a lot, too. So it all kind of, coincided with each other. They'll be back. Don't underestimate it because of a bad game. They'll figure this problem out.
Speaking of being back, Patrick Mahomes says this loss is going to motivate him, which sounds great in the moments after a loss when you're as great a player as Mahomes. But, Jeff, is that reasonable that he's going to sort of come back with a vengeance and somehow be better than he's already been in his career?
I actually believe it. And I believe it for this reason, because some of the errors that were made, and I understand that the offensive line contributed to it, but some of the errors made by Mahomes was on Mahomes, right? The rollout, the first interception for a touchdown, he really should have thrown one earlier. He kind of pitched one up early in the game into double coverage on the sideline that could have gone the other way. He did not play his best game, right? And then backed up in your own end zone, down 17. You can't make that mistake. I know you're getting pushed in, but listen, we all got issues, and he knows as a quarterback that is not a turnover that you can afford. He'll come back and play better. And again, his job is to get everybody else to stay as laser focused as he is. If there's anybody I would believe is going to go use this as motivation, it's Patrick Mahomes.
We've talked a lot about the Chiefs. We'll get you out of here on a question about the Eagles. The Eagles had great coordinators this year, offense and defense. They've just lost Kellen Moore to be the head coach of the Saints. Well, does that create any unpredictability with the Eagles, or is this somehow a fairly easy fix?
Well, you would like to say it would create a lot of unpredictability, and Kellen Moore did a great job. And it will take time to adjust to a new one, but if anybody can do it, Hurts can do it. I mean, I think the guy's had a new offensive coordinator almost every year of his career. So if there's anybody who can figure it out and get everybody back, and here's the other part, Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, and Sirianni, these guys are offensive-minded guys. Those two understand what the nucleus of this offense is and what they want it to be. There's not a better one than Stout of the offensive line. As long as you keep that part together and you bring in the other passing portion of it, I think it's still smooth sailing. Hurts can adjust, and that offensive line, and then you got Saquon Barkley, two of the best receivers on the outside and a great tight end. Pretty much all offense is going to look pretty good, in my opinion.
Yeah, all I would say to anybody out there is that in the NFC Championship game in the Super Bowl, they scored a total of 95 points. Ooh. How do you like that? 95. Ooh. Thank you,
Let
Jeff.
Them know.
Thank you, Jeff.
Appreciate it.
Let's take one last break. Still to come, Michaela Schifrin cites fear as a reason for withdrawing from Thursday's World Championship race.
And will Alex Rodriguez and his partner get the votes necessary to buy the T-Wolves? Minnesota.
I wonder if Jeff's ever seen a team that scored that many points in those two important games. That's so many. I know some of them are on defense. That's so many. Happy time, people. Happy 26th birthday, Darren Baker. The son of Dusty Baker, Darren Baker is a utility player for the Washington Nationals. Baker played in 9 games last season in his major league debut. He had 7 hits and 14 at-bats, including 2 doubles. It's possible Baker won't start the season with the big club, but wherever he goes, he'll be carrying a major league batting average of .500. We all have a soft spot for Darren Baker because of what you're about to see. 23 years ago, Dusty was managing the Giants in Game 5 of the World Series, and Darren was kind of sort of a bat boy. He got in the way of a real play at home, and J.T. Snow picked him up and carried him out of harm's way, and everybody exhaled gratefully.
Tony, it's one of the great moments. To me, I don't know, in sports, yes, I'm going to say it, history, the video of that. And if you're a dad, you don't have to be a dad, but if you are and you think of your son getting in harm's way like that, doing something he loves, and JT Snow just snatches him out of the way to the rescue, I mean, it's heartwarming. I can see that video a million times. I never get tired of it. Never.
Happy anniversary, Buster Douglas. On this day 35 years ago, the 42-1 underdog knocked out previously unbeaten and undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, Mike Tyson, in Tokyo. Everybody remembers Tyson on all fours, crawling around the ring looking for his mouthpiece. This was probably the most stunning boxing upset since a young Cassius Clay beat the supposedly invincible Sonny Liston in 1964. In Douglas's very next fight, he came in at 246 pounds, about 15 pounds heavier than he was against Tyson. Was promptly knocked out in the 3rd round by Evander Holyfield, who weighed 208 and was in great shape.
Buster Douglas may have flamed out after the big upset. Obviously, Muhammad Ali, the original GOAT, greatest of all time, did not. Tony, I'm with you. Those are the 2 greatest. Those define the word upset.
Yeah.
Ali, Cassius Clay beating Sonny Liston, and Mike Tyson going down like that. And we all remember where we were if we're old enough to have been there. Amazing. Can't get over that video either.
Happy trails to Michaela Schifrin defending her world title in giant slalom later this week. Schifrin has withdrawn from Thursday's race, saying she is still dealing with PTSD after suffering a puncture wound to her oblique muscles during a crash in Vermont last November. Schifrin explained, and I quote here, "Coming to terms with how much fear I have, doing an event I love so dearly only 2 months ago has been soul-crushing," unquote. That said, Schifrin felt confident enough to ski the slower slalom portion of the team combined today, with Breezy Thompson skiing the downhill leg, and the duo won gold. It's a record-tying 15th World Championship medal for Schifrin. She also has 3 Olympic medals, 2 of them gold.
Tony, not enough is made of the toughness that skiers have to demonstrate. Schifrin and Lindsey Vonn, who suffered more injuries? Who's tougher than the 2 of them? Nominate them for toughness anytime.
I had it wrong. Breezy Johnson. I said it wrong. I apologize for that. Big finish quickly. Alex Bregman reportedly choosing among the Red Sox, Tigers, and Cubs. Make your pitch, Mr. Chicago.
The Cubs are going to be the best team among those 3 this year, even though the Tigers were in the playoffs last year. Chicago, Wrigley Field, the NHL is on break for the 4 Nations face-off. Break it down.
I don't even know what four nations they are. The NHL's off for the next 2 weeks. Basketball's going off on Thursday. We're going to have to talk about bowling. An arbitration ruled for A-Rod and Mark Lowry in their bid to buy the Timberwolves. Is that significant?
Yes, although 23 or 30 NBA owners have to vote for that now. I want A-Rod to get the team. I want that. Closer Kenley Jansen is joining the Angels for 1 year, $10 million. Good signing?
He's an all-timer. What does he have left? He was good in Boston last year. Last one, fifth-ranked Tennessee at number 15. Kentucky tonight. Who you got in this game?
Kentucky's lost 4 of its last 6, but I'll go with the Wildcats at home.
Either bowling or archery, I guess, next week. We're out of time. Try to do better the next time, and I'm Tony Kornheiser.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, Knucklehead. You can get the podcast on the app or Apple Podcasts. And
no
now,
pickleball. No
your
pickleball.
sports.
Not covering it. No.
This is SportsCenter.
Our PTI bonus topic.
All right, Wilbon. Are the Eagles built for long-term success?
Yeah, they're already having long-term success. I mean, just look what they've done in the last 7 or 8 seasons. Yes, they're built for it, Tony. And the thing that they do to sustain long-term success, there's one thing you have to do. And Howie Roseman, their GM, he does a lot of things. He signs well, Saquon Barkley. You know, they make good trades. He's done that, A.J. Brown. But mostly the Eagles, under his leadership, draft spectacularly. Just in recent drafts, Tony, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, Cam Jurgens, Devontae Smith. These are the pillars of a championship team, or at least a championship contender. So they're going to contend. Long-term success doesn't mean you win every year. It means you contend more often than not. The Eagles do. The answer is a definitive yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. They've already had long-term success. Other than Kansas City, nobody has been in the Super Bowl as many times in the last 8 years as the Eagles have. They've been there 3 times. They right now have the best offensive line in football. They have the best running back in football. They have a very solid quarterback who rarely makes terrible mistakes. And did you see what their defense did against Kansas City? So, I mean, of course there are other good teams. Detroit is a fine team, maybe every bit as good as the Eagles. But the Eagles in the last 3 regular seasons have won 14 games. Then they had a late collapse and only won 11, then won 14. That is long-term success.
Long-term.
There should be no doubt in anyone's mind. They've got it.
No doubt.
They've got it, yeah.
Now, let me just carry this one step further, since the absurdity is what all sports discussions move toward. That doesn't equal dynasty. So don't say dynasty.
No.
Don't say it. Don't think it.
No.
You got to win multiples before you get to even the conversation of dynasty.
So there are 3 words that we want to outlaw. We want to outlaw dynasty. We want to outlaw GOAT. And we want to outlaw culture. Nobody knows what they're talking about. Those 3.
I knew you were going there.
Okay?
Ali's the GOAT.
Stop.
That's it. He invented it. Greatest of all time. Otherwise, shut up. That's
now
it.
get rid of legacy, too. Get rid of
We're
it.
done.
Get it out
Hate
of here.
legacy. Back to you.
Yeah, good.